In this lesson, we're going to learn how to edit JPEG images, so non-RAW images, really any sort of image that is not a RAW image in Photoshop. So to open up your files in Photoshop, just find them in your Finder or Documents, right-click, and choose to open with Photoshop. Now, there's a couple different ways to edit your photos in Photoshop. So what I'm going to show you is the first way, which I suggest not doing, and then the second way, which I suggest doing. So the first thing most people do will click on their image, they'll add it, and they'll go up to Image, Adjustments, and then you get all of these different options for editing. So say you want to edit the brightness and contrast, you can do that. And this module pops up, and you can make it brighter or darker, more contrasty or less contrasty, and then click OK. Okay, so then you're happy, you keep moving on, you go to adjustments. Oh, maybe I want to add saturation. So I'll choose hue saturation, increase the saturation a bit, and click OK. Then what I'll do is go image adjustments. Oh, what's photo filter? Let's check that out. Oh, cool. There's warming filters, cooling filters. Let's make this a little bit more warm. We will increase the density to make it super warm. And then we'll click OK. And then we'll be like, wait a second. It's a little bit too saturated. Oh, shoot. How do I go back and edit the saturation? Well, whoops, you can't, because we have these edits baked into this image now. So there are two different ways to edit properly. So I'm going to go ahead and reopen this JPEG in Photoshop. So let me close this. I'm not going to save it. And then I'm going to reopen this file in Photoshop. Okay, so there's two ways that I suggest. One is either making duplicate layers and editing those as you go. So for example, I can take our image, I can drag it and drop it into this little new button right here. This looks like a little post-it note. And now I have this background copy. I can take that, I can add adjustments. For example, again, I can do brightness and contrast. I can add some contrast, make it a little bit darker, click OK. So then what I would do is rename this layer. So you can double click the text, and I'll call this brightness contrast. Then I will then duplicate this layer again, drag it, drop it into the new item button. I will do image adjustments, hue saturation. Then I will increase the saturation, click OK. And then double click the name and call this saturation. And then I would just keep going. And if I ever go too far or want to go back, I always have the previous edits that I've done. So I can go back to those ones. And say I messed up with this saturation, I can just delete that and then duplicate this brightness contrast again and then redo the saturation edits. Okay, so that's one way, but now let me tell you the best way to edit photos in JPEG. And I hope you appreciate me going through these different levels of editing, because I want you to get the right way. And really, I started editing the way that I taught you in the first second of this lesson. That was the way that I edited, and it was bad because I'd always mess up and need to go back or restart. Another way to edit your photos, and the best way, is with layer adjustments. So down here you have this little circle that looks like a half black and half white circle. If you click that, you have all these different layer adjustments. So for example, we can add a brightness and contrast layer adjustment. So now if I increase the contrast, decrease the brightness, that is just a layer that is adjusting this background image. So if I turn this on and off, I can see it or not. I can also reopen it if I need to change it later, which I couldn't do with the other type of edits. Now I can do my hue saturation, boost the saturation a bit. Let's add a photo filter. So let's make it a bit warmer. Super warm, just for a purpose of seeing how it works. And now I can turn some of these on and off to see what it looked like before. I can go back and edit these. So say I don't want warming, maybe I want a cooling filter to make it a little bit more blue. Maybe the hue and saturation. Maybe I want it to be completely black and white with that blue filter on, or maybe I want it more saturated now. Or I can change the hue and make it super funky. This is the way to edit photos the right way in Photoshop with these layers. The only other thing I guess you need to know is how to crop your layers. So to crop your photos, you can use the crop tool over here. So crop tool, it's also C on your keyboard if you want to use the keyboard shortcut. And you could choose a ratio, so the aspect ratio, if again you want to do 1:1 square for social media purposes, profile images, that's great. So you can click 1:1. And now this, you can click and drag your photo around this spot. You can drag in and out the edges or the corners of this box. And when you're ready to finish your crop, you can click this check mark button up here or press return on your keyboard. But you got to be careful because this commits you to your crop. You won't be able to go back and edit it later and bring back the image. So you want to make sure that you're happy with your crop. The other way to basically create an image the right size for whatever you're doing is to basically create a new project, create it the size that you want. So say 500 by 500. Open that, and now I can take all these layers and duplicate them into our new project. And now I have to resize everything. So I can drag in and out. But now I can move this image around this new project, and I don't have to worry about cropping it and getting rid of the photo and not being able to use it later. So you see how I can move this around. I can increase the size. And this project is 500 by 500 pixels wide and tall. And I can move it around, change it later. Okay, so to save any of these images, either in this new project or the original project, go to File, Save As. And you can save it as a JPEG image. Thanks so much for watching. Now you know all the different ways to edit your JPEG photos in Photoshop, and we'll see you in the next lesson.